things. And so when things happening to them,
speak about things year in, year out, and you have seen them before you.
Prophet Elvis Mbonye, the prophet with an unmatched record of prophetic fulfillment.
These prophecies are indications that you are indeed in the presence of the testimony of Jesus, who is, or which is, the spirit of prophecy.
January 2nd, 2024.
I was praying again in the spirit, and I saw, this time again, taken to the DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, and I saw something that I thought I had dealt with. But I saw again the leader there, and his life, there was a hit on him, and I needed to pray for him because there was a hit on him, and for him it seemed so scary. While I was still observing what I was observing there, I saw another man rise up, and he was dark and tall. I do not know those guys, and a bit, he wasn't slender, but he was a bit more slender than the current guy is fat, I think, so was a bit more slender. Hallelujah. And this guy was charismatic and charismatic and charismatic. And I sensed that this guy that was rising up wanted to, like, was a representation of a new wave, a new wave, a new wind. I don't know why I didn't feel so at peace with what was unfolding right there. So I began to pray for that nation. I began to pray for those leaders. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. You remember the prophecy I gave about Zimbabwe? I'm just wanting to give you clues and what. You remember the guy who came over and took over? How he was in the wings? Okay, but let's first stop there without making conclusions.
5 months and 3 weeks later, in a startling fulfillment of prophecy, the Democratic Republic of Congo dominated global news with the breaking report of a failed coup and the attempted hit on the life of President Felix Tshisekedi.
Let's take you from there to Kinshasa in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In the early hours of the morning, reports start to emerge of gunfire ringing out around the presidential palace. A few hours later, more details start to come through. A coup attempt that had failed, according to the country's army. It said, quote, some foreign fighters and Congolese men in military fatigues tried to storm the building. Now, the statement also said the situation is under control. Several suspects detained. There reported to have been 2 attacks. The first on a house of the former chief of staff and close ally to President Tshisekedi in the early hours. Then on the Palais de la Nation, the office of the President of the Republic. Local media claiming the attackers are linked to an opposition leader in exile.
Armed men wearing military uniforms stormed the DRC president's office and called for President Felix Tshisekedi to step down.
4 people, including the coup leader, has been killed. The country's army has also arrested 50 others involved in the rebellion, including 3 American citizens.
Democratic Republic of Congo, and I saw something that I thought I had dealt with. The leader there and his life, there was a hit on him.
In yet another spectacular display of the power of prophetic preservation, Prophet Elvis Mbonye's prayer over the nation of DRC and its president averted a deadly national crisis, as these rebels' attempt was much closer and far more deadly than the previous coup attempt on President Felix Tshisekedi's life, which had also been prophesied back in 2019 and was thwarted thanks to the prayer by Prophet Elvis Mbonye.
What surprises us is that the palace of the nation has a lot of presidential guards, but these people accessed it easily and were well armed.
The palace of the nation has always been very secure. How did they get there?
What is more worrying is the fact that, these armed men who are linked to foreigners, with U.S. citizenship and Canadian nationalities, they managed to penetrate the presidential defense, and then found themselves within the presidential palace, as they call it, or the presidential residence. It shows, there was some level of violence, that may have been used. Otherwise, perhaps some level of compromise within the presidential guards. So it's still very early to tell, but it does demonstrate a very weak point in terms of, the renewed presidency of President Tshisekedi, who has just won his new term of office and is even yet to name his ministers.
So I began to pray for that nation. I began to pray for those leaders.
The prophecy mentions the preservation of leaders, and in a spectacular fulfillment of prophecy, news reports indicate that the rebel masterminds of the coup attacked 3 of the topmost leaders in the DRC government.
Armed men, including foreign fighters, attacked President Felix Tshisekedi's office and the residence of the Economy Minister, Vital Kamerhe. The group planned to attack the home of new Prime Minister Judith Suminawa and the residence of the Defense Minister, but they couldn't identify the residences.
Again, something which is quite critical is to note that these armed men were going after the critical personalities, the presidential residence which houses the president, the home of the person who is who has been nominated to be the Speaker of the Assembly, and some perhaps the Ministry of Defense. It tells you that there has been some level of planning and preparation within it. It's a big concern for DRC Congo and the region.
I saw another man rise up, and was dark and tall. I do not know those guys, and a bit, he wasn't slender, but he was a bit more slender than the current guy is fat, I think, so he was a bit more slender. Hallelujah. And this guy was charismatic. And I sensed that this guy that was rising up wanted to, was a representation of a new wave, a new wind. I don't know why I didn't feel so at peace with what was unfolding right there.
The attackers were led by Christian Malanga. Malanga and his handful of